I mean, how many of us have had roommate situations when we were younger where one person doesn't pull their weight? One gal isn't doing the dishes or isn't sweeping the floor or isn't cleaning the bathroom when she's done, and everyone gets annoyed. And then that's how I feel when I see practices dedicating an entire room to this stuff, but it's not pulling its own weight. It's not doing the chores for you. It's not paying its fair share. Welcome to Keep What You Earn, the show for business owners who want to scale profitably and build a business that's actually worth something. My name's Shannon Weinstein, and I run a fractional CFO firm to help seven-figure aesthetics and wellness practices scale with clarity, cash flow, and confidence without burning out or guessing their way into growth. Each week, you'll hear practical CFO insights, real stories about scaling and exiting, and clear financial strategies designed to help you understand what's holding your business back and how to fix it. If you want to follow along with the exact framework that we use with our clients, sign up for the free 5-part video series for aesthetics practice owners, where I walk you through the financial building blocks required to scale your practice and increase enterprise value. You'll find the link in the show notes. Look, we've all done it. We've fallen victim to the shiny object syndrome of the new machine, the new laser, the new thing, the new treatment that is going to revolutionize our patient's experience. And look, the reps do a really good job at selling you this stuff. They really do. And for the most part, they can prove their results. But here's the thing. Before you go add new modalities like cryo, saunas, IV drips, all of the fancy things that are really hot right now or might be hot in your area. And by the way, just so you know, don't not add these things that I'm telling you not to. Just really contemplate whether the popularity of these items really translates to profitability for them. And if it sells well, it might make sense to add it, but I want you to pause and think about what is profitable at scale for your practice. And these modality decisions, these decisions to add new treatments or new products, new services, are usually emotional. They're not analytical. And you could have a lot of pressure to match the competitor offerings. You're hearing clients are asking for it. And I can't tell you how many times that clients ask for things and then never use them. I know this firsthand. I mean, I used to teach Zumba. I taught Zumba for about 10 years. And every single week, they'd be like, oh, if you just had a Saturday class, I would come. If you just had a Saturday class, I would come. Oh, if you guys were just open Saturdays, I would come. We did. No one came. Because a lot of people are all talk and no action. And you have to assume that a lot of people are not going to take action on these types of things they're asking for, and they're not going to put their money where their mouth is. And ultimately, that's what you need. So we don't want to make a decision to add new things without first contemplating if it makes sense for your practice, not just for your patients and what they want. So I want you to reframe how you look at new services or new modalities. You have to look at it based on your space. Now, space is the resource with limitations, right? You have a limited resource and you need to be able to conserve it well. And you have to use your rooms thoughtfully, because a room taking up space in your practice really, could sacrifice another purpose for that room. So for example, if you put a sauna in a room that could otherwise serve as a space for injectables, you better bet that, you better make sure that room is going to make more profit than it would for another purpose. And this is where you got to know your numbers. You really got to know, because rent, build out, fixed costs, long-term commitments. Square footage is valuable when you grow, and you got to know revenue per square foot. You've got to know the opportunity cost of dedicating rooms to low turn services and the permanence of upgrades you have to make. Oh my gosh, the plumbing, the electrical, the ventilation that you're going to need for certain treatments. I mean, don't even get me started with cryo, what you're going to need in terms of energy to boost that thing and keep it running. And the ability to do that longevity, that flexibility is much better than the novelty of a really cool service. You really have to reframe this as you're not selling treatments, you're monetizing your rooms effectively. And so I talked about revenue per square foot, but let's talk about that. This really tells you what is pulling its weight with regard to treatment. What is revenue per square foot, right? So you have to take your total revenue divided by your total square footage. That's a very, very high level area, a high level way of calculating it. But it will tell you a lot about how your rooms are being utilized. And what you really should do is look at your schedule and look at idle rooms that are not being used for their intended treatment. And you should probably not be dedicating an entire room to a particular type of treatment that only has a couple of patients a week coming into it. You should at least be able to utilize that room for other purposes. You need to have that flexibility. And when we're talking about large scale changes like adding cryo or a sauna, I mean, IV drips, maybe they don't take up too much space, but if you're going to create a room around that treatment and you're going to create an environment where the patients feel like they're fully immersed in that treatment, you're dedicating a lot of space and therefore a lot of opportunity to that type of service. And some services look like they're profitable until you factor in the space. So just because an IV drip, and I'm not saying that like IV drips aren't profitable, they're profitable. But if you're looking at an IV drip and you're looking at, okay, we're going to sell, these services, we're going to sell these different combinations, and we may not be fully booked, but every treatment is profitable. I'm making money on top of my providers and on top of the cost of the consumable item. Cool. But once you factor in, it's taking up that entire service. So if you look at the gross profit that service generates, right? And you're hitting a certain margin, let's say, even if you're hitting a 60% margin on these types of services, you still have to factor in, can those actual dollars, are we busy enough that even if you're at a 60% margin, are you at a 60% margin only $100,000 of your revenue, right? If it's only $100,000 on like 3 million, then it's like, that's a really small part of the practice, but it's taking up like a whole room, like a fifth of my space. So that's not really fair. You almost have to look at it like, has it earned being your roommate? Is it paying its fair share to be there? I mean, how many of us have had roommate situations when we were younger where one person doesn't pull their weight? One gal isn't doing the dishes or isn't sweeping the floor or isn't cleaning the bathroom when she's done, and everyone gets annoyed. Maybe just me. I had a roommate situation where we had 5 women in one bathroom. So I think of that. And then that's how I feel when I see practices dedicating an entire room to this stuff, but it's not pulling its own weight. It's not doing the chores for you. It's not paying its fair share. She's paying only a little bit of rent and she's kind of freeloading. So what are you doing with those rooms? We really got to get that under control. And finally, you really got to be looking at multi-location. You have to master this in order to even conceive a second location. And if you're already there, if you're already at second and third locations, you cannot expand further until this is mastered. And hopefully you've already mastered this in order to get to locations 2 and 3. But as you're looking at your numbers, you have to be looking at the demands. You have to be looking at the gross profit. You have to look at the space. But if you're not understanding how the space is being utilized for your practice, what you're doing is multiplying what's not working. So you might actually be dealing with some of these services that are a little bit more novel. You're going to deal with some of these services. You're going to offer them, fine. Let's call it, let's say it's a sauna, something like that. You're like, it's making us money. It's doing pretty good. Okay, fine. But it's taking up a lot of space. And don't be fooled by the demands of that translating to a second location. Maybe you don't need all the same things in your second location. Maybe you have one location that has that and it takes up a certain amount of space there and it justifies its presence, but it doesn't over in the second location just yet. Let them earn their keep. Let them earn their way through and to take up space in your practice, because what you're going to see is a lot of people are coming to your practice for, say, Botox, injectables, maybe microneedling, something like that. And then something maybe non-invasive, but then they'll progress into other services that prolong the effects of these treatments. And these might be good alternatives for you. But here's what you could do. If a client says, hey, I really want to do a sauna treatment, or I really want to do cryo on top of this to like recover my body, I work out a lot, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you also figure out who in your area has these types of things and you work out a referral. Ain't a bad idea. Depending on what you have going on, in my neighborhood, we had a cryo spa. Like, it was built all around cryo. So there's cryo, there was Normatech, there was like recovery, right? Like athlete recovery type center. And so there is no obligation for you as a med spa to offer everything under the sun to cure everything for your patient. Like, you cannot be the solution to everything. Stick to the core things that you can control. And there are certain things like like cryo, for example, that might extend just outside the immediate bullseye target of what you do in skincare. And you could possibly partner with someone who has the machine, offer some type of referral, whatever it may look like, especially if they don't offer the other services that you do. So that way you can make sure your patient has a holistic treatment plan, and also that you're not losing money. And you can also absorb a little bit of a referral fee for not paying for that machine. Kind of a cool idea. And you also have to keep in mind, oh, and here's the big kicker when it comes to these machines and these other modalities: training the staff. Oof. So if you have to worry about training the staff on these new lasers or these new treatments, this is going to further delay your ability to make profit off of them, because on top of that, they have to get trained up. They won't be able to deliver this to a patient for some time. There could be the cost of, God forbid, mistakes or slight misuse of the equipment or lack of functionality. I mean, it happens. It can happen. That's why we have insurance. But you have to be factoring all of that in terms of a delay in benefit of using this stuff. And you've also have to pay for this stuff too, not to mention the loans, the debt that you incur for buying these assets for your business. You really have to be careful. And I'm not saying that they don't make sense for you. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you have to be able to logically approach this without the whimsy of, oh, but it's like such a popular treatment and all my patients want it. They keep asking for it, so I think I'm going to do it. Run the numbers first. The numbers might support you. They might support you. Here are the signals that this might be a good idea for you. You can use a shared or flexible use room for it. You don't have to dedicate an entire space for it. Here's an idea. If you want to introduce these things, do a pop-up or a pilot program before you build out permanently. So can you do spot cryo? Can you do IV drip, like a temporary thing? I actually saw a med spa doing, or I think it was like an IV drip type spa, doing like a bus. Like they brought it to conferences and stuff like that. There was actually a cryo spa that came to the Zumba conference that I was at for fitness, and they did stuff like that. I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm saying you can do sort of like mobile, or you could do in your practice, you could have a temporary use of this type of stuff and see if it goes over well. Let people try it. Say it's limited time only. Not only that, that could boost up a little cash injection because people know they have limited appointment times. Say we're only taking 12 people. We're only taking 15 people. And then they'll, I better go reserve, So you could do that. You definitely have to have a revenue per square foot threshold. You need to have an ability to calculate how much they're going to be making you per square foot. And you don't want to make this part of like a core floor plan. You want to make this a complementary placement where the service adapts to the space, not the other way around. You've got to make sure that it makes sense in the flow. It doesn't get in the way. Like and you also don't need to be using that room for something else at the same time where it's taking up space. For example, numbing time, if you want to put them in there for numbing, what you could be doing, like if then there's a sauna or something else in there, that means you can't book sauna appointments while someone is numbing either. So you can't have multiple patients in there at the same time. So you've really got to balance that out, make sure your scheduling is on point. So here are the things you should be asking yourself as a practice owner if you're looking at introducing a new modality, a new type of treatment. What does this room earn per month, the one I'm thinking of using? What else could this room earn if I used it for something else? How many clients per day does this require to make financial sense for me? What happens if demand drops 20, 30, 50%? Am I still going to make money off of this? And then basically, would a buyer keep this service? That's an interesting one, because would a buyer of my practice, so meaning if you sold your practice, would a buyer keep this on the menu? And you have to ask yourself, is this something I did? Like it was my pet project. It was my hobby. Like I got excited about it, but like, would it make sense to an investor if they knew that you were doing that? So you have to make sure that you're factoring that in. So here's how you want to maximize your space. You want to prioritize high margin services and high throughput, meaning it's kind of like a restaurant. You can turn the tables quickly, right? So if you can turn tables quickly and they're all buying expensive margaritas, restaurant's doing well. Same thing with a med spa. If you're able to turn out multiple patients, see multiple at a time, have short appointments that are really, don't rush people out of there, but you have these high potency of revenue per hour. Design the rooms for flexible use, make sure they're comfortable for various types of services and treatments. Let your data drive your offerings, not your emotion, not trends, not popularity. And when you go pick your space, if you haven't picked a space or you're looking at moving, understand revenue per square foot potential. And obviously, you would want to keep in mind any sort of build out, any sort of expansion needs to be with a buyer in mind. So like when you decorate your house, you can see behind me, I have like pistachio mintish green walls. I have, kind of neutral colors, neutral tones. I live in Costa Rica. This is actually very, very pale for Costa Rica color. But what we did was we have a lot of tan. We have a lot of grayish blue. We have a lot of light colors that are more neutral, earth tones. Why? Because a buyer would find that to be more attractive. If you're painting your house bright orange, a buyer might go, ooh, that's an eclectic taste, good for her, but like not my style. Now I'm gonna have to repaint. You don't want a buyer of your practice to walk into your practice and say, that's a choice. And then realize that they're going to have to do a complete build out to rework the rooms that you've already designed and the services you're already offering. So keep that in mind too, how you can make it more neutral in the sense of a buyer coming in. So like I said, all of these different things come into play when you're planning out new services, new treatments, or even just your layout and floor plan. So keep that in mind before you just jump in and agree to what your reps are telling you about these new treatments and modalities for your practice. Hey, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If it left you feeling inspired to take action, make sure to check out our free video series that walks you through the same framework that we use as a CFO team to identify what's holding a practice back from growth and how to fix it. Links in the show notes. See you on the next episode.